Marmion by Sir Walter Scott, Canto 3rd, The Hostel or Inn. The livelong day Lord Marmion rode, the mountain path the palmer showed, by glen and streamlet wended still, where stunted birches hid the rill. They might not choose the lowland road, for the merse forayers were abroad, who, fired with hate and thirst of prey, had scarcely failed to bar their way. Oft on the trampling band from crown of some tall cliff the deer looked down. On wing of jet from his repose in the deep heath the black cock rose. Sprung from the gorse the timid roe, nor waited for the bending bow. And when the stony path began, by which the naked peak they won, up flew the snowy ptarmigan. The noon had long since passed before they gained the height of Lammermoor. Thence winding down the northern way, before them, at the close of day, old Gifford's towers and hamlet lay. No summons calls them to the tower, to spend the hospitable hour. To Scotland's camp the lord was gone, his cautious dame in bower alone, dreaded her castle to enclose so late to unknown friends or foes. On through the hamlet as they paced before a porch, whose front was graced with bush and flagon trimly placed, Lord Marmion drew his rein. The village inn seemed large, though rude. Its cheerful fire and hearty food might well relieve his train. Down from their seats the horsemen sprung, with jingling spurs the courtyard rung. They bind their horses to the stall, for forage, food, and firing call, and various clamor fills the hall. Weighing the labor with the cost, toils everywhere the bustling host. Soon, by the chimney's merry blaze, through the rude hostel might you gaze, might see where, in dark nook aloof, the rafters of the sooty roof bore wealth of winter cheer, of seafowl dried, and solan store, and gammons of the tusky boar, and savory haunch of deer. The chimney arch projected wide, above, around it, and beside, were tools for housewife's hand. Nor wanted, in that martial day, the implements of Scottish fray, the buckler, lance, and brand. Beneath its shade, the place of state, on oaken settle Marmion sate, and viewed around the blazing hearth. His followers mix in noisy mirth, whom with brown ale in jolly tide, from ancient vessels ranged aside, fully active, their host supplied. Theirs was the glee of martial breast, and laughter theirs at little jest, and oft Lord Marmion dined to aid, and mingle in the mirth they made. For though, with men of high degree, the proudest of the proud was he, yet trained in camps he knew the art to win the soldier's hardly heart. They love a captain to obey, boisterous as March, yet fresh as May, with open hand and brow as free, lover of wine and minstrelsy, ever the first to scale a tower, as venturous in a lady's bower. Such buxom chief shall lead his host from India's fires to Zambia's frost. Resting upon his pilgrim staff, right opposite the palmer stood, his thin dark visage seen but half hidden by his hood. Still fixed on Marmion was his look, which he, who ill such gaze could brook, strove by a frown to quell. But not for that, though more than once full met their stern encountering glance, the palmer's visage fell. By fits less frequent from the crowd was heard the burst of laughter loud, for still, as squire and archer stared on that dark face and matted beard, their glee and game declined. All gazed at length in silence drear, unbroke, save when in the comrade's ear some yeoman, wondering in his fear, thus whispered forth his mind. Saint Mary, saw'st thou e'er such sight? How pale his cheek, his eye, how bright, whene'er the firebrand's fickle light glances beneath his cowl. Full on our Lord he sets his eye, for his best palfrey would not I endure that sullen scowl. But Marmion, as to chase the awe which thus had quailed their hearts, who saw the ever-varying firelight show that figure stern and face of woe, now called upon a squire. Fitz-Eustace, know'st thou not some lay to speed the lingering night away? We slumber by the fire. So please you, thus the youth rejoined, our choicest minstrels left behind. Ill may we hope to please your ear, accustomed constant strains to hear. The harp full deftly he can strike, and wake the lover's lute alike. To dear Saint Valentine no thrush sings livelier from a springtide bush, no nightingale her lovelorn tune more sweetly warbles to the moon. Woe to the cause, whate'er it be, detains us from his melody, lavished on rocks and billows stern, or duller monks of Lindisfarne. Now must I venture as I may to sing his favourite roundelay. A mellow voice Fitz-Eustace had, the air he chose was wild and sad. Such have I heard in Scottish land rise from the busy harvest band, when falls before the mountaineer on lowland plains the ripened ear. Now one shrill voice the notes prolong, now a wild chorus swells the song. Oft have I listened and stood still as it came softened up the hill, and deemed it the lament of men who languished for their native glen, and thought how sad would be such sound on Susquehanna's swampy ground, Kentucky's wood-encumbered brake, or wild Ontario's boundless lake, where heartsick exiles in the strain recalled fair Scotland's hills again. Song. Where shall the lover rest, whom the fates sever from his true maiden's breast, parted forever? Where through groves deep and high sounds the fair billow, where violets die under the willow. Elu lauro, soft shall be his pillow. There through the summer day cool streams are laving. There will the tempest sway, scarce our boughs waving. There thy rest shalt thou take, parted forever, never again to wake. Never, oh never, elu lauro, never, oh never. Where shall the traitor rest? He the deceiver who could win maiden's breast, ruin and leave her in the lost battle, borne down by the flying, where mingles war's rattle with groans of the dying. Elu lauro, there shall he be lying. Her wing shall the eagle flap o'er the false-hearted. His warm blood the wolf shall lap ere life be parted. Shame and dishonor sit by his grave ever. Blessing shall hallow it, never, oh never. Elu lauro, never, oh never. It ceased, the melancholy sound, and silence sunk on all around. The air was sad, but sadder still it fell on Marmion's ear, and plained as if disgrace and ill and shameful death were near. He drew his mantle past his face, between it and the band, and rested with his head a space, reclining on his hand. His thoughts I scan not, but I ween that, could their import have but might been seen, the meanest groom in all the hall, that e'er tied courser to a stall, would scarce have wished to be their prey, for Lutter Ward and Fontenay. High minds, of native pride and force, most deeply feel thy pangs, remorse, fear for their scourge mean villains have. Thou art the torturer of the brave, yet fatal strength they boast to steel their minds to bear the wounds they feel, even while they writhe beneath the smart of civil conflict in the heart. For soon Lord Marmion raised his head, and smiling to Fitz-Eustace said, Is it not strange that, as ye sung, seemed in mine ear a death peal rung, such as in nunneries they toll for some departing sister's soul? Say, what may this portend? Then first the palmer silence broke. The livelong day he had not spoke. The death of a dear friend. Marmion, whose steady heart and eye ne'er changed in worst extremity. Marmion, whose soul could scantly brook even from his king a haughty look, whose accents of command controlled in camps the boldest of the bold. Thought, look, and utterance failed him now. Fallen was his glance, and flushed his brow, for either in the tone, or something in the palmer's look, so full upon his conscience strook, that answer he found none. Thus oft it haps, that when within they shrink at sense of secret sin, a feather daunts the brave. A fool's wise speech confounds the wise, and proudest princes veil their eyes before their meanest slave. Well might he falter. By his aid was Constance Beverley betrayed. Now that he augured of the doom, which on the living closed the tomb. But, tired to hear the desperate maid threatened by turns, beseech, upbraid, and wroth, the cousin wild despair she practiced on the life of Clare, as fugitive the church he gave, though not a victim, but a slave, and deemed restraint in convent strange would hide her wrongs and her revenge. Himself, proud Henry's favourite peer, held Romish thunder's idle fear. Secure his pardon he might hold, for some slight mulct of penance gold. Thus judging, he gave secret way, when the stern priests surprised their prey. His train, but deemed the favourite page, was left behind, to spare his age. Or other, if they deemed, none dared to mutter what he thought and heard. Woe to the vassal who durst pry into Lord Marmion's privacy. His conscience slept, he deemed her well, and safe secured in yonder cell, but wakened by her favourite lay, and that strange palmer's brooding say, that fell so ominous and dear, full on the object of his fear. To aid remorse, venomed throes, dark tales of convent vengeance rose, and Constance, late betrayed and scorned, all lovely on his soul returned. Lovely as when, at treacherous call, she left her convent's peaceful wall, crimsoned with shame, with terror mute, dreading alike escape, pursuit, to love, victorious o'er alarms, hid fears and blushes in his arms. Alas, he thought, how changed that mien, how changed these timid looks have been, since years of guilt and of disguise have steeled her brow and armed her eyes. No more of virgin terror speaks the blood that mantles in her cheeks. Fierce and unfeminine are there, frenzy for joy, for grief, despair. And I the cause, for whom were given her peace on earth, her hopes in heaven. Would, he thought, as the picture grows, I on its stalk had left the rose. Oh, why should man's success remove the very charms that wake his love? Her convent's peaceful solitude is now a prison, harsh and rude. And pent within the narrow cell, how will her spirit chafe and swell? How brook the stern monastic laws? The penance, how, and I the cause? Vigil and scourge, perchance even worse. And twice he rose to cry, to horse! And twice his sovereign's mandate came, like damp upon a kindling flame. And twice he thought, gave I not charge she should be safe, though not at large? They durst not, for their island, shred one golden ringlet from her head. While thus in Marmion's bosom strove repentance and reviving love, like whirlwinds whose contending sway I've seen Loch Venacar obey, their host the palmer's speech had heard, and talkative took up the word. I, reverend pilgrim, you, who stray from Scotland's simple land away to visit realms afar, full often learn the art to know of future weal or future woe, by word or sign or star. Ye might a knight his fortune hear, if, knight-like, he despises fear. Not from hence, if fathers old aright our Hamlet legend told. These broken words the menials move, for marvels still the vulgar love, and Marmion, giving license cold, his tale the host thus gladly told. The host's tale. A clerk could tell what years have flown since Alexander filled our throne, third monarch of that warlike name, and eke the time when here he came to seek Sir Hugo, then our lord. A brave never drew a sword, a wiser never at the hour of midnight spoke the word of power, the same whose ancient records call the founder of the Goblin Hall. I would, Sir Knight, you longer stay, gave you that cavern to survey. Of lofty roof and ample size, beneath the castle deep it lies, to hew the living rock profound, to floor the pave, the arch to round. There never toiled a mortal arm, it was all wrought by word and charm. And I have heard my grandsire say, that the wild clamour and affray of those dread artisans of hell who laboured under Hugo's spell sounded as loud as ocean's war among the caverns of Dunbar. The king Lord Gifford's castle sought, deep labouring with uncertain thought. Even then he mustered all his host to meet upon the western coast. For Norse and Danish galleys plied their oars within the Firth of Clyde. There floated Hako's banner trim above Norwegians' warriors grim, savage of heart and large of limb, threatening both continent and isle, Bute, Arran, Cunningham, and Kyle. Lord Gifford, deep beneath the ground, heard Alexander's bugle sound, and tarried not his garb to change, but, in his wizard habit strange, came forth, a quaint and fearful sight. His mantle lined with fox-skins white, his high and wrinkled forehead bore a pointed cap, such as of yore clerks say that Pharaoh's magi wore. His shoes were marked with cross and spell, upon his breast a pentacle, his zone of virgin parchment thin, or, as some tell, of dead man's skin, bore many a planetary sign, combust and retrograde and trine, and in his hand he held prepared a naked sword, without guard. Dire dealings with the fiendish race had marked strange lines upon his face. Vigil and fast had worn him grim, his eyesight dazzled seemed and dimmed, as one unused to upper day. Even his own menials with dismay beheld Sir Knight, that grisly sire, in his unwonted wild attire. Unwonted, for tradition's run he seldom thus beheld the sun. "I know," he said, his voice was hoarse, and broken seemed its hollow force. "I know the cause, although untold, why the king seeks his vassals' hold. Vainly from me my liege would know his kingdom's future weal or woe. But yet if strong his arm and heart, his courage may do more than art. Of middle air the demons proud who ride upon the racking cloud can read in fixed or wandering star the issue of events afar, but still their sullen aid withhold, save when by mightier force controlled such late I summoned to my hall. And though so potent was the call that scarce the deepest nook of hell I deemed a refuge from the spell, yet, obstinate in silence still, the haughty demon mocks my skill. But thou, who little know'st thy might, as born upon that blessed night when yawning graves and dying groan proclaimed hell's empire overthrown, with untaught valor shalt compel response denied to magic spell. "Gramercy," quoth our monarch free, "place him but front to front with me, and by this good and honoured brand, the gift of Coeur de Lion's hand. Soothly I swear that, tide what tide, the demon shall a buffet abide." His bearing bold the wizard viewed, and thus well pleased his speech renewed. There spoke the blood of Malcolm. "Mark, forth pacing hence at midnight dark, the rampart seek, whose circling crown crests the ascent of yonder down. A southern entrance shalt thou find, there halt, and there thy bugle wind, and trust thine elfin foe to see, in guise of thy worst enemy. Couch then thy lance, and spur thy steed, upon him, and St. George to speed. If he go down, thou soon shalt know whate'er these airy sprites can show. If thy heart fail thee in the strife, I am no warrant for thy life." Soon as the midnight bell did ring, alone and armed, forth rode the king, to that old camp's deserted round. "Sir Knight, you well might mark the mound. Left hand the town, the Pictish race, the trench long since in blood did trace. The moor around is brown and bare, the space within is green and fair. The spot our village children know, for there the earliest wildflowers grow. But woe betide the wandering wight that treads its circle in the night. The breadth across a bowshot clear gives ample space for full career, opposed to the 4 points of heaven. By 4 deep gaps our entrance given, the southernmost our monarch passed, halted, and blew a gallant blast. And on the north, within the ring, appeared the form of England's king, who then 1,000 leagues afar in Palestine waged holy war. Yet arms like England's did he wield, alike the leopards in the shield, alike his Syrian courser's frame, the rider's length of limb the same. Long afterwards did Scotland know, fell Edward was her deadliest foe. The vision made our monarch start, but soon he manned his noble heart, and in the first career they ran. The elfin knight fell, horse and man, yet did a splinter of his lance through Alexander's visor glance, and raised a skin, a puny wound. The king, Light, leaping to the ground, with naked blade his phantom foe compelled the future war to show. Of Largs he saw the glorious plain, where still gigantic bones remain, memorial of the Danish war. Himself he saw amid the field, on high he brandished war-axe wield, and strike proud Haco from his car. While all around the shadowy kings, Denmark's grim ravens cowered their wings. 'Tis said that, in that awful night, remoter visions met his sight, foreshowing future conquest far, when our sons waged northern war. A royal city, tower and spire, reddened the midnight sky with fire, and shouting crews her navy bore, triumphant to the victor shore. Such signs may learned clerks explain, they pass the wit of simple swain. The joyful king turned home again, headed his host, and quelled the Dane. But yearly, when returned the night of his strange combat with the sprite, his wound must bleed and smart. Lord Gifford then would gibbling say, "Bold as ye were, my liege, ye pay the penance of your start." Long since, beneath Dunfermline's nave, King Alexander fills his grave. Our Lady, give him rest. Yet still the knightly spear and shield the elfin warrior doth wield upon the Brownhill's breast, and many a knight hath proved his chance in the charmed ring to break a lance, but all have foully sped, save two, as legend tells, and they were Wallace White and Gilbert Hay. Gentles, my tale is said. The quaffs were deep, the liquor strong, and on the tale the yeoman throng had made a comment sage and long, but Marmion gave a sign, and with their lord the squires retired, the rest around the hostile fire their drowsy limbs recline. For pillow underneath each head the quiver and the targe were laid. Deep slumbering on the hostile floor, oppressed with toil and ale, they snore. The dying flame in fitful change threw on the group its shadow strange. Apart and nestling in the hay of a waste loft, Fitzeustace lay. Scarce by the pale moonlight were seen the foldings of his mantle green. Lightly he dreamt, as youth will dream, of sport by thicket or by stream, or hawk or hound or ring or glove, or, lighter yet, of lady's love. A cautious tread his slumber broke, and close beside him when he woke in moonbeam half and half in gloom, stood a tall form with nodding plume. But ere his dagger Eustace drew, his master Marmion's voice he knew. "Fitzeustace, rise, I cannot rest. Yon churl's wild legend haunts my breast, and graver thoughts have chafed my mood. The air must cool my feverish blood, and fain would I ride forth to see the scene of elfin chivalry. Arise, and saddle me my steed. And, gentle Eustace, take good heed thou dost not rouse thy drowsy slaves. I would not that the prattling knaves had cause for saying o'er their ale that I could credit such a tale." Then softly down the steps they slid, Eustace the stable door undid, and darkling Marmion's steed arrayed, while whispering thus the baron said, "Didst never, my good youth, hear tell that on the hour when I was born, Saint George, who graced my sire's chapelle, down from his steed of marble fell, a weary wight forlorn? The flattering chaplains all agree, the champion left his steed to me. I would, the omen's truth to show, that I could meet this elfin foe. Blithe would I battle for the right to ask one question at the sprite. Vain thought, for elves, if elves there be, an empty race, by fount or sea, to dashing waters dance and sing, or round the green oak wheel their ring." Thus speaking, he his steed bestrode, and from the hostel slowly rode. Fitzeustace followed him abroad, and marked his pace the village road, and listened to his horse's tramp, till, by the lessening sound, he judged that of the Pictish camp Lord Marmion sought the round. Wonder it seemed, in the squire's eyes, that one so wary, held, and wise, of whom 'twas said he scarce received for gospel what the church believed, should, stirred by idle tale, ride forth in silence of the night, as hoping half to meet a sprite, arrayed in plate and mail. For little did Fitzeustace know that passions in contending flow unfix the strongest mind. Wearied from doubt to flee, we welcome fond credulity, guide confident, though blind. Little for this Fitz-Eustace cared, but, patient, waited till he heard, at distance, pricked to utmost speed, the foot-tramp of a flying steed come townward rushing on. First, dead, as if on turf it trode, then clattering on the village road. In other pace then forth he yode, returned Lord Marmion. Down hastily he sprung from cell, and in his haste well nigh he fell. To the squire's hand the rein he threw, and spoke no word as he withdrew. But yet the moonlight did betray the falcon crest was soiled with clay, and plainly might Fitz-Eustace see, by stains upon the charger's knee and his left side, that on the moor he had not kept his footing sure. Long musing on these wondrous signs, at length to rest the squire reclines, broken and short, for still, between, would dreams of terror intervene. Eustace did ne'er so blithely mark the first notes of the morning lark.